Hello everyone, Max here with Fiction Rant, bringing you part 6 of my series discussing the Star Trek versus Star Wars debate. This part will discuss the unique advantages of the ships and soldiers in each universe. I'll reiterate that this is the Star Trek Federation as of the Dominion War versus the Galactic Empire as of Return of the Jedi. In this case, by unique advantages, I'm talking about the things that exist in one universe that don't really have an equivalent in the other. Things like Star Wars Lightspeed and Star Trek Warp are of course very different in terms of capabilities and execution, but they're both essentially just ways of going faster than light to go from planet to planet very quickly, so I'm not considering those unique per se. So, for Star Trek and the Federation, there's a couple of technologies that really have no Star Wars counterpart. There's transporters, matter replicators, and holodecks. There's of course more, but I'll focus on these. To my understanding, these transporters and replicators are really just different applications of the same technology, the ability to convert matter to energy and back again. Transporters convert people and materials to energy in one place and then put them back somewhere else. Matter replicators take stores of material and then reconfigure it into useful items or food. Hologram projectors are a little different as they utilize a combination of light projection and force fields so that people can see and interact with anything on the holodeck that there is being projected, but they're not really converting matter to energy and back again, so it's a little different, but they do seem to behave in a very similar way and can be quite dangerous if safety protocols aren't in place. The other unique factor that helps contribute to the capabilities of the Federation is the variety of alien species employed by almost every ship in the fleet. Most of these species are basically just humans with differing cultures and mental and physical capabilities, but in some cases, such as betazoids and androids, you get people with extrasensory perceptive capabilities, empathic abilities in the case of betazoids, and in the case of Data, a walking, talking supercomputer. Though in his case, he's actually unique, so his advantage that he can confer is pretty limited. In terms of combat ability, I think the main advantage for the Federation comes from transporters, since they allow the deployment of troops directly to any unshielded location, or the capture of anyone from any unshielded location. Replicators and hologram projectors, I believe, have the potential to be much more useful, but those uses are either totally hypothetical or were used in the series, but only once or twice. So they're not demonstrated to be a widely used thing, so I won't consider them for this. For example, being able to use holoprojectors to create just an image clone of a starship in space, that's possible, but they don't do it often, so I'm not going to consider it something that is a baseline capability of Federation vessels. I'm also not going to be weighting the use of betazoids and their empathic abilities very heavily because I'm doing a combat situation here, and really the only emotion they're going to be able to pick up is they're trying to kill us. They also cannot force other people to feel emotions, so their application in combat would be relatively limited. For Star Wars and the Empire, the most obvious unique quote-unquote tech is, of course, the Force. The Force enhances the strength, speed, and reaction time of the wielder, along with a few more specific powers that vary pretty widely from user to user. For Force users, the main ones are, of course, Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader. They're capable of spectacular feats of the Force usage, including shooting lightning, choking people at a distance, battle meditation, an ability that helps bolster the morale and coordination of allies while eroding the morale of enemies, and some level of prescience that can allow, especially Palpatine, to glimpse the future and sense the thoughts and emotions of those around him. They're capable of using Force telekinesis to even crush vessels, though this is never demonstrated in the main movies or in the series. In Rise of Skywalker, Rey was able to hold back a transport ship using the Force and then ultimately blow it up using Force lightning that she was somehow able to use for no reason. But in any case, if she could do it, Palpatine and Vader were probably also capable of the same level of Force usage. There's more lower-ranking Force users in the Empire, but none are anywhere near the level of Palpatine or Vader in terms of power level or ability. For any of those Force users, though, they would be deadly combatants with both Force powers and lightsabers, and they seem to be invariably just phenomenal fighter pilots. Another lesser-known unique asset of the Empire was the Interdictor Cruiser. This vessel hasn't actually really shown up in the movies much, at least not in a way that you focused on it and they really explained what it did, but they have been there for a long time. They aren't heavily armed or armored or anything like that, but what they do have is massive gravity well generators, which if placed correctly and activated, could force enemy vessels to drop out of hyperspace and make jumping back into hyperspace really difficult, if not impossible, until the gravity well generators could be disabled or destroyed. How exactly this would affect warp drives of the Federation is unclear, but we do have multiple instances where ships get too close to black holes and struggle. Granted, this was black hole levels of gravity, which is far beyond the capabilities of interdictors, as if they did generate that kind of gravity, they'd destroy themselves and any supporting fleet that got too close. So they'd be generating enough gravity to mess with hyperspace, but not so much that they would endanger their own fleet. Think planet, not black hole. With this limitation in mind, I think vessels at warp would be slowed by getting near an interdictor, but not nearly enough to force them to drop out of warp and switch to impulse engines, but we'll get more into that later. Another unique advantage that the Empire has is, of course, the Death Star. The Federation doesn't really do planet-killing superweapons, at least not on purpose. So the fact that the Death Star exists and is capable of one-shotting entire planets, I'll absolutely consider that to be a unique advantage, plus it's a giant battle station. So now, no matter which Death Star you're talking about, these battle stations are absurdly massive, heavily armed and armored, and utilize a super laser that is capable of destroying an entire planet. The second Death Star was an improved, though incomplete version of the idea that was capable of targeting individual capital ships with its super laser and firing at these reduced power levels once every 3 minutes or so. A vast improvement over the first Death Star's refire rate of once every few hours for low-yield blasts, or once per day versus planets. The first Death Star also wasn't particularly accurate, and would hit within a few kilometers of the target, which is fine for hitting a planet, but pretty much useless against even really large capital ships, unless you're firing against something like another Death Star. The super laser for the first Death Star had an optimal range of 4 million kilometers, or 13 light seconds, and a maximum range of 420 million kilometers, or 23 light minutes. I couldn't find any information about if these numbers changed at all for the second Death Star, but in any case, the range is absolutely staggering. I don't know if the improved targeting of the second Death Star was sufficient to hit capital ship-sized targets at those ranges, or if it was limited to closer engagements, but for the purposes of this debate, though, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that the second Death Star could hit a capital ship-sized target at the full 420 million kilometer range. For perspective, that's over 4 times the distance between Earth and Mercury. The final unique aspect of the Empire is their use of droids to do basically everything. They repair things, perform navigation calculations, deliver messages, act as translators, etc., etc. Most droids are built for a specific purpose, and none have demonstrated particularly profound capabilities for higher reasoning, but all are at least somewhat effective at their jobs. Strangely, despite the fact that most droids in Star Wars behave as if they are sentient beings, they're often treated as totally disposable, and, as pointed out in the Attack of the Clones, clone soldiers are far superior to droids, and still considered totally disposable by most people. So there doesn't really have much bearing on the combat capabilities of either side, but definitely a big ethical issue. So, how will this impact the overall matchup? Well, you'll just have to check out the rest of the series to see what I think about that question, but in the meantime, what do you think of all this? Did I skip over something I shouldn't have? Are my numbers and conclusions totally wrong? Please comment below, and until next time, live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you.